Hello there, and welcome to an extra special ClueCon Weekly. It's David Duffett here, and I'm delighted to be a temporary host of a ClueCon Weekly because, as you know, if you're a regular viewer, usually it's Luca Pradovera or even John Gray sometimes as well in this seat. But today I get to do it to chat with none other than fellow Brit and fellow ClueCon enthusiast, devotee, Mr. James Bowley. Hello there, James.
Hi, David. Can I say it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be going back to ClueCon this year. So I missed last year and I missed it so terribly. This year, I promised Sharon and the rest of the team that I would make it this year. My flight is booked, my hotel room is booked, everything is in place, so I'm coming.
That's great news because I can tell you, James, exclusively that ClueCon missed you. So it wasn't only you missing ClueCon. Everybody at ClueCon was thinking, where is that James Bowley? What's going on with the dangerous demos? Now, we're going to be talking a lot about dangerous demos in this particular ClueCon Weekly. That's the main point. And so what I was hoping, James, is to jump straight in and for you to tell us a little bit of the background about how you came up with dangerous demos all of those many years ago. And we should mention, by the way, that dangerous demos have actually occurred in a number of different open source telephony gatherings over the years. So maybe you could mention that as well. But I'm going to hand over to you, James, for a bit of narrative about dangerous demos.
Okay, well, going back into the deep, dark past. Once upon a time, I was a person in VoIP. And I used to go to, well, all of the events. So the VON events, if you remember those.
I do.
They were the original events. But then Astricon, then ClueCon started off after Tony broke away from Asterisk and rather bravely decided to write his own application. Very, very brave, very improbable, but it's kind of worked out. So I started going to ClueCon as well. And at the same time, in parallel, over in Europe, I was doing the Gamma EO event and Open SIR, as it was, or SIP Express Router. So I've been using Gamma EO, SIP Express Router, Asterisk, like forever. So you and I, David, we really are kind of the old Brit users of all of this stuff, aren't we?
I was actually introduced at a meeting a few months ago. They were talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and the person speaking said, my contribution is I've just employed an old white guy, David Duffett. So I don't mind being called
lovely.
I'll wear it with pride.
Well, these days, people like you and I think we're the minority, aren't we? Really quite bizarre. And I remember the first time I met you, David, it was at an Astricon somewhere in Arizona. And I remember Mark Spencer trying to run me over in a golf bucket. Do you remember that one?
I do remember. I can tell you the year as well. That would have been 2007, and it was Carefree, Arizona, right out in the desert.
I think it was. And I remember you bouncing bits of Cadbury's chocolate off the top of my head. So a clever concept. One that, of course, we've incorporated now in dangerous demos, except I don't throw lumps of Cadbury's chocolate. I do gummy bears and gummy eggs because slightly less, and jelly babies.
Well,
because jelly babies are cool.
Yeah, and this soft candy that you're talking about, like gummy bears and jelly babies, are particularly apt for the American market because they're quite a litigious society, and you don't want to be sued for hurting people with chocolate that's getting thrown around the place, do you?
Yeah, well, that kind of reminds us of some of the dangerous demos that almost did take off the odd head or two, but I'm sure we'll come to that later.
Yeah, let's go first, James. So how did you come up with this concept?
Well, once upon a time, I was a VoIP engineering type guy, and I used to go to all these these events, and in order to get in without paying, because that's very boring, having to not only get across to America but then pay to get in, I always used to apply and get speaking slots. But anyway, after doing it for 8-9 years, I was kind of running out of things to talk about, because I try not to repeat myself too much. And so that's when we came up with the concept of getting everybody else to do the work for me. And who was it? Who was the guy who did the asterisk-powered Roomba vacuum cleaner? Do you remember?
That was David Troy, I believe, wasn't it?
It was David Troy, of course it was. And that was just so brilliant. I thought, Astricon needs more of this. And so the concept was kind of hatched. And I don't know who I sold it to. I think it was possibly Mark Spencer originally. I did a little pitch and he said, oh, that sounds like fun, or American words to the equivalent. And so we did the first iteration.
Yes.
I
would like to just send a parallel thread to this as well. So we've got James's ingenious idea of hosting and facilitating a session that would get him a free ticket, because generally speaking, at these kinds of events, ClueCon is one of them as well. If you are a speaker, you get a free pass. If you're not a speaker, you have to buy a ticket, just like everybody else. And so that was James's ingenious idea. But at the same time, there was a parallel thread, and that was people like Evan McGee, well known to ClueCon Weekly viewers, Ben Clang, do you remember, with the big hat, the fedora, and people like Tim Panton were all accused in one way or another of doing dangerous demos. Some of them dangerous insofar they used drones and missile launchers, but others of them dangerous insofar that there's a huge danger they might not work. So I think there was a culmination of things coming together here, James. But carry on.
Yeah. In fact, just mentioning Ben Clan, Ben was one of the original professional dangerous demo players, and I have happy memories of. Do you remember the time he had an asterisk-powered missile launcher? And the objective of the demo was to fire missiles at me, and I got the hard hat, which I still have with asterisk stickers on it. And then he missed and hit Tim Panton, which I thought was absolutely great. They're taking out the opposition. So it started off as a simple kind of one-level competition, but as time went on, it broadened. So it became apparent that these demos fall into different classes. So one of the first things we actually did was to, in order to take away the fear, the sting of failure, we decided to put together a prize called the Crash and Burn Prize, which is awarded to the most spectacular failure. And the whole purpose of that is to take away the fear of failure, because if you can completely crash and burn big time and still win, who cares that you've crashed and burned?
And in real life, that's a great attitude to have, isn't it? Removing the fear of failure, because if you really worried about that, you'd never prototype anything, would you? Or try and get
that's right. And a lot of the members of the open source real-time communications community are a bit perfectionist, so they don't like failing. So just to get them to push out the boat a bit is difficult. So anyway, that was the first additional class that we put in. So we had two.
James, before you move on to any more classifications or prize categories, can you just tell viewers what is the dangerous demo concept? Well, we understand there must be a demo involved, but what are the parameters around it?
Well, it is time constrained. You have precisely 3 minutes to demonstrate something to a culmination, If you try and go over, in most cases you get cut off quite ruthlessly, unless it's really, 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 really good and everybody wants to see the end bit. Then you get a little bit of extra time. So it's a 3-minute demonstration, and it could be literally anything as long as it's entertaining, educational, energetic, explosive. All the E words in there. And one of the objectives is to entertain the community, whilst at the same time showing off your capabilities. Something that we've noticed over the years is that those people who are highly skilled tend to be those people who are good at doing dangerous demos.
There's a correlation there for sure, and it's usually quite a fast-paced session, isn't it? Because if facilities permit, there's 2 podiums up on stage, and while one demo is being delivered, the next one is being prepped and ready, so that for the audience's sake, it moves fast from one demo to the next.
Yeah, and for the compare, one of the challenges is keeping the momentum going, because some of these demos can be quite heavy, quite complicated to set up. So hence the idea of having one setting up whilst the previous one is being performed. Should we go back to classifications now?
Yes,
so we've done the most entertaining. We've done the crash and burn. A little bit later, it became apparent that some people were doing some of the most beautiful, most elegant demonstrations. Example, Anthony Minnesala, who is just such a superstar when it comes to making things work. But they never, ever appeared to be dangerous. And so I decided that we really needed to have a class specifically for that kind of demo. And that's where the Swan Prize came from. And the concept there is, if you can imagine a swan gliding across a lake, barely leaving a ripple behind it, but underneath the water, there's a lot of stuff going on. That is Anthony Minnesala and the other Swan Prize winners.
What appears very graceful and pedestrian has actually got all sorts of moving parts chuntering away underneath. Yeah, and Tony has been quite a regular winner of the Swan Prize, hasn't he, over the years?
Yeah, we could almost call it the Anthony Prize, couldn't we? But no, other people have been known to win it, but he is particularly good at doing it. But I think he has the largest collection of Swan Prizes in the world.
He does very well. And actually, this reminds me just of a little micro story here. It was at an Astricon where Tony and the Free Switch team had come along because we encouraged participation from the Free Switch team, and they would deliver a talk about Free Switch at Astricon. But I was preparing for a dangerous demo using a Raspberry Pi, and I was having trouble with the networking side of it, and Tony came along to help me with it. And I thought, that is community there, isn't it? We're all one big open source telephony community. And so Tony jumped in to be helpful, which was really kind of him. So what other prize categories are there in dangerous demos, James?
Well, we've done 3. The 4th one is the audience vote. And we decided that we wanted to allow the people in the audience to have a say, and to be able to vote on the demo that they found most interesting.
Yeah.
But the challenge there is when you've got a room full of really top class communications applications developers, how do you stop the little devils from cheating?
Indeed.
And there have been a number of instances where the votes start coming in, and all of a sudden one individual gets 500 votes as a block, and there are a couple of individuals. Are we allowed to name them?
Yes, I think you should, because it's not name and shame. I'm sure they'd wear it as a badge of pride, James.
Yeah, people like Alex Kinch.
I knew his name was
And in fact, one year we actually put in a special kinch tripwire specifically to detect the incoming votes from a Kinchi direction, and he was got banged to rights, I think. But anyway, that's the fourth category, the audience vote.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in, James, to say the reason that they have been ripe for tampering was because that was generally done by text, wasn't it? By SMS, the voting for the audience vote. And I mean, long before the Americans or the Brazilians or any other people were involved in vote rigging, we were doing it in dangerous demos, weren't we? With people like
just like the Eurovision Song Contest. But I think probably the dangerous demo voting system now, which has evolved, is probably a little bit bit more robust when it comes to manipulating the scores than the Eurovision thing.
Yeah. Now, before we carry on to the next part of our chat, is that all of the categories now, James? We've done
that is all. That is all of it. That's all of the categories.
Most entertaining and audience vote. And so I think we should just take a quick moment to acknowledge your friend and colleague, young Andy Smith, because he's often behind the scenes here, isn't he?
Yeah, that's exactly where I wanted to go next. I just want to get in a mention of my glamorous assistant, Mr. Andy Smith, who these days doesn't get out as often as he'd like to, mainly because he's quite a lot older than I am, and so so he's not quite as mobile as he once was. But he routinely joins us at ClueCon remotely. Do you remember the year when Brian brought his robot thing, video robot, in?
I do.
And we had a virtual Andy running up and down the aisles, and he was also roaming around the basement of the Swiss hotel in the early hours of the morning, and I think gave the security guard a bit of a heart attack.
Yes, and when you say running, it was a wheeled robot, wasn't it? So
yeah, it was a wheeled robot. Yeah.
Yes, and by the way, now you mentioned Swiss Hotel, it's a good time for me to just jump in quickly and say we're back in the Swiss Hotel. That's where we're going to be this year, between the 4th and 7th of August, down there in downtown Chicago. And as usual, dangerous demos will be happening on the afternoon of the last day. So that's Thursday, the 7th of August. That's when dangerous demos will be going on. If you know James, or you can find your way to him, you can even register for dangerous demos ahead of time. However, the most exciting part is when James press gangs people around the place. We'll come on to that later. Before
we always say sign up before you get to ClueCon, but nobody ever does. So possibly the most difficult part of running dangerous demos is just going around, as you say, enticing people to do it. And people don't go to ClueCon thinking, oh, well, I've got really good dangerous demos this year, because nobody does that. We know from experience. And so the only way to get people to play is to get them in a dark corner and threaten them with bodily violence until they say yes. The only person who says yes is actually Anthony Minnesala.
Oh, well, I'll tell you who else has always been a stalwart participant at ClueCons, at least, and that's Len Graham. He's usually stepped up to the plate, hasn't he?
Yeah, but the very first one he did, he had to be forced to do it.
Is that right?
That particular one is very memorable because Len and his
Mark Crane, who are we talking about here?
Yeah, it was Mark Crane. Yeah, I got them together and they agreed. Yeah, we're going to do a dangerous demo. And then I went. I said, well, so what are you going to do? And they said, well, we're going to demonstrate how we can configure our free switch PBX in less than 3 minutes.
PBX, to be precise, James.
Yeah, it was Fusion PBX, of course. And I said, well, that's not very interesting. Can you make it a bit more dangerous? And poor old Mark Crane looked, yeah, downfallen. But anyway, they were about 2/3 of the way through the batting order, and it came to their slot, and they didn't turn up. And I thought they'd done a runner, because this happens occasionally when people can't get their dangerous demo going, and then they go and hide somewhere so they don't have to do it and crash and burn. But anyway, we got right to the very end, and then Len and Mark burst in at the back and went, right, we're ready, we've got it. And what they've done is they've taken their original demo and put it all on a little Raspberry Pi, which they borrowed from somebody with one of those explosive battery packs. It was a free switch battery pack, the famous exploding.
Least said, soonest mended, I think there, James.
Yeah, don't say anything to Sharon about that one. That was. But anyway, they had a battery pack, and then they went down to the UPS office in the hotel, got a whole load of bubble wrap and wrapped it up. So we ended up with this Raspberry Pi with the PBX Fusion PBX on it in kind of a basketball shape, and then proceeded to pump this thing into the audience, so the audience could play like volleyball with it around the audience whilst they configured it.
I remember it well, and it was a great boon for audience participation as well. And one particular touch I remember is I think Dan York was there that year, and he drop kicked it across the audience as well.
It was I think it was Andy Abramson.
Sorry, you're right. I'm getting Dan York.
It was Andy Abramson mixed up. And it missed Professor Carroll's head anyway by about 2 millimeters, because it's a mighty kick. And so Carroll lived to smile again, and the demo worked. And at the conclusion of it, they invited people to join in on a conference call on the PBX as it was bouncing around the room. So
that was
totally unrehearsed, very dangerous, but totally brilliant.
Yeah, it was. There's been and since then, Len has come back on multiple occasions and done other fascinating demos. One of them, again, was, I think, Fusion PBX on a Pi Zero, gaffer taped to the underside of a Frisbee, which was getting thrown about, which is like a variation on a theme. But who could forget Evan McGee doing a dangerous demo from the bottom of a lake? Do you remember that one?
Well, it wasn't a lake, it was the Pacific Ocean.
Was it the Pacific Ocean?
Yeah, so the demo started off in his kitchen, in his house, and he proceeded to waterproof his iPhone in two bags, plastic bags, and then took off his clothing, ran out of his back door, and ran out through his garden, along a causeway, and then jumped into the Pacific Ocean.
Yes,
live.
That did seem quite dangerous at the time, didn't it?
Yeah, but he's renowned for dangerous demos, and some that don't work. Do you remember the one where he had a light bulb which was supposed to monitor your language, and if you started saying naughty words, it would flash to remind you to clean up your act. But of course, this thing didn't work, and so poor old Evan, the normally very polite and well-behaved, gentle, dear Evan, was getting more and more het up and throwing more and more bad words at this thing, and he just refused to do anything.
Yes, I think that was funny in itself. Is what the Americans would call it. He was cussing at the light bulb through Asterisk, I think, at the time, and it wasn't quite going on. Well, James, we've talked about some of the memorable demonstrations that have happened. The thing I want to emphasise is it's open to all, and James, as he said, he goes around trying to round people up in the nicest possible way. There's not usually any threats. But there is there is the carrot as opposed to the stick, and James is now going to show you one of the Dangerous Demo's carrots.
Yeah, this is what you're competing for if you enter. In this marvelous silk-lined box is an example of one of the trophies that you're going to be competing for this year. So this is a 3D laser printed, laser etched lead crystal trophy. It weighs an absolute ton. And I should be bringing 4 of these. It's always fun taking these in your luggage, in your hand luggage, through the airport security, because they show up as black lumps, guaranteed weight in your hand luggage.
Yes,
but that's what you're competing for. There are 4 of these.
Yeah, we're grateful for you taking one for the team by not only having them produced, but then carrying them all the way to Chicago to be distributed as well. You know, you're doing a great job for the open source telephony community there.
And just to get the credit, I pay for these myself, and they're not inexpensive. They
good
anyway. It's me giving something back, something to the community.
What a stalwart participant you are, James. We really appreciate it. Okay, so let's just recap on what we've talked about so far. We've covered the concept of dangerous demos that James came up with in the first place. We've talked about the categories of prizes. There are 4 prizes on offer. We've talked about some memorable participants over the years. James, I would like you to just give an appeal now for participants for the upcoming one, which, as we already mentioned, is on the 7th of August, the Thursday afternoon there. What can you say to entice people to participate in this one?
Well, I would say start thinking now, start collecting ideas and bits of kit, bits of code. Normally people don't have a fully developed idea of what they're going to do before they arrive. Some people do, but it's reasonably rare. Normally there's a frenzied activity going on.
That was Mrs. Duffett making a celebrity guest appearance there.
Yeah. So a little bit of preparation is a good thing, but not essential. If anybody has a prepared one, I would be delighted to receive them. My email is, as always, JB, Juliet Bravo, at tel, .et.
Brilliant. James. JB at tel.et.
Yeah, so, yeah, ET Phone Home. So my company is Telet, and just a little plug. Telet is the used to be the 5th mobile network operator in UK, but as two of the bigger ones have merged last week or last month, my little company is now the 4th biggest mobile network operator in UK. So
brilliant.
There,
yeah,
and easily the most dangerous one. Oh, and David, something that we almost missed is that this year I'm planning to do my own dangerous demo. Sometimes it's very difficult to watch everybody else doing their demos, and I'm thinking, well, I want to have a go at this. So I have a proper full-blown speaking slot, and I'm going to be doing not one, but a series of little dangerous demos for you.
Well, this is within your speaking slot, is it, James?
It is indeed, yeah. So not for prizes, but just for fun. And I'm hoping that you will learn some bits and pieces. And my secondary objective is to try and influence people to get people to write more code for the things that I'm going to be showing off. So I've never had any difficulty coming up with bright ideas, but you know, I'm not the person who is best qualified to cut code, and a lot of the people at ClueCon are. ClueCon, by the way, is now the premier open source real-time communications event certainly in North America, possibly the world now. The
Yeah,
other big one that I really do rate is Cama Elio World, run by Daniel Miele in Berlin. But certainly ClueCon is one that I wouldn't want to miss. And I think in the history of all of the ClueCons, I've missed three. I missed the very first one. I missed one when I had a bit of a family disaster, and I missed last year. I had to send Bianca, who I understand did a reasonably good standing job.
I think she did. Yes, I remember Bianca was there with Rita Lopez as well from the Homer Project from QXIP, and yeah, there's a few ladies in VoIP gathering there as well, which was nice. So, James, looking forward to your own session in ClueCon. I'm sure everybody else is as well. Just tell us as we bring this particular ClueCon Weekly in for a smooth and on-time landing. What are the other reasons, aside from dangerous demos, that people should make their way to Chicago for the week of the 4th of August and stay there at the Swiss Hotel until the 7th and do maximum participation in ClueCon? What are the various reasons that people should attend?
Well, for me, it's all about meeting people. I've got a rule, which is when we go for that first function, whatever it is, normally a pizza party. I can't remember.
That's right. The out
yeah.
Monday night.
Yeah, I always look around and try and find some person or people that I've never met before. And a couple of years ago, at the pizza party, I looked around and there's this chap, clearly from Africa, sitting on his own. And I went up and introduced myself, and that was Fred from Uganda. Yeah, what a superstar. And I tell you, I learned so much from Fred. Some of the things that they get up to in East Africa are just unbelievable. Like running asterisk or free switch on a microtick router. I didn't even know you could do that. But Fred showed me how, and absolutely brilliant. So meeting people, that's one really good reason to go to ClueCon. Another good reason is it's all about floating ideas, concepts. So what you find is when you get a bunch of really, really clever people together in one place, the ideas just flow. And so quite often concepts that are born in places like ClueCon. And quite often they then later end up being transformed into code and products. And some of them are commercially very successful. So that's another really, really good reason for going to ClueCon. It's all about sharing ideas, concepts, making friends, teaming, making consortia. No person can operate solely on their own. You always need a team. And where better to find really good people than at ClueCon?
Yeah, thank you, James. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, if you cut code, you're very likely to be at ClueCon because ClueCon is for developers, by developers. But even if you're not a programmer, then on the Monday, when we do have a hackathon at ClueCon, there's also the Maker Challenge for people that don't do coding. So there is something for everybody there. As James says, it's a great opportunity to meet people, others from the open source telephony community. And more than that, there's a great family feel. That's one of the first things that I noticed. And my first ClueCon, James, was a little bit after yours. I think my first one was 2015. So just about 10 years ago now. And I've always valued the real family feel that there is. There's a lot of inclusiveness, including for the evening events. There's everything from the pizza venue gathering that James has talked about to the gigabit reception, to the poker night. There's all sorts of things that go on there. We're past our time, James. We've got to say bye-bye, but it's been great having you along on this very special ClueCon Weekly. So thank you for your participation.
Thank you, David. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you and Mrs. Duffett in Chicago and all the rest of the ClueCon family, because you're right, it's just like a family. Wonderful, wonderful community. So See you all in Chicago, first week in August.
Yes, August 4th to the 7th at the Swiss Hotel. Get to ClueCon.com if you've not already done so to book your ticket. And James and I will see you there. But for now, it's bye-bye.
Bye-bye.